What's up, guys? This is God, Grit, and Glory, and I am your host, Veto Creed. We talk about the stuff that most people stay quiet about: Jesus, business, politics, and occasionally a few conspiracy theories. No scripts, no filters, just straight up truth. So join us as we unravel and speak truth. Welcome to God, Grit, and Glory. My name is Veto Creed, and I'm joined here by
Kyle Bruce.
Yeah, so I'm the host and he's the co-host, and we're going to be talking about a few subjects here, specifically about why we're here, what we're trying to accomplish, why I founded this podcast, and why I invited Kyle into the mix here. So
awesome, glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to start here with Kyle. Kyle, share a little bit about your experience and why you're here in Florida. What brought you to Florida? What enticed you to come here? Was it just the sunshine, or was it something more than that?
Oh man, so it's crazy. It's a long story, really, because before I moved down here, I had a lot of success professionally, working for a really large corporation, a growth company that grew really rapidly. Started there in 2012. My first real, I would say, professional type of role. I've always believed, I guess you would call it the American dream. You know what I mean? That if you do the right things for the right reasons, and you bust your ass and you continuously try to improve and learn, that you're going to be rewarded for that. And so started as an entry-level leader position. Started in, like I said, 2012. Worked there for 10 years. And when I left, I was the vice president of operations at the company. It was crazy. When I started, we were $125 million in revenue. When I left 10 years later, we were $2 billion in revenue.
Oh, wow.
So just rapid growth. Learned a lot. Did that through COVID, led through COVID.
Okay.
In a remote environment. And I mean, honestly, man, just got burned out to the point that I wanted to do something else. I really feel like I enjoy and get fulfillment in building, whether that's people, process, or technology.
Gotcha.
And there just wasn't a ton of opportunity left because the company had grown and scaled so much. And so I was really trying to find something that, as crazy as it is more of a startup to help me have more opportunity to be able to grow. So when I left, I was there pre-IPO. We IPO'd $13 a share. 6 years later, it's $550 a share. So did really well.
Okay.
When I left, I thought I was going to take some time off, and maybe I would start a business or do my own type of startup. First 5-6 months, I played a lot of golf. And I quickly figured out that all the people I liked to hang out with still had jobs, and they couldn't play golf. So got bored, man. Got really bored. And growing up in Oklahoma City, there's just not a lot of tech opportunities. I wanted to try to duplicate the success I'd had at my previous job. And when I was there, CEO, COO, works really closely with them, and they would always tell me that it was really a unicorn experience. You're never going to experience any kind of growth or that financial opportunity again. And for a long time, I believed it. But I think that what I've learned over time is that's not true. If you find yourself and are very selective in the right position, you can put yourself in that opportunity. And so my wife and I decided that if I was going to do something else in peak earning years, that we would probably have to look somewhere outside of the state. And so we just kind of agreed that we'd be open to anything. I took job interviews in LA, Denver, New York, Dallas.
So you didn't actually have a set place in mind and a location. You were like, oh, I'm going to go here.
Yeah, no, nothing like that. I wanted to do something in operations still for a tech company, and I want it to be a hyper-growth company.
Okay.
I felt like that's the type of environment that I thrive in. That's the type of environment where you have a lot of opportunity. And so I got really close with a company based out of Miami. It was in the same industry that I was in previously. they were working through the offer, and it was right around Christmas time. And in the corporate world, when you get that, that week before Christmas all the way up until after New Year's, it's ghost town. A lot of places.
And how long ago is this?
This would have been in 2022. No, I'm sorry, that'd have been 21, December 21.
Okay, so like 4 years ago.
Yeah, and so sitting around waiting on an offer to get through the holidays. At that point, my wife and I decided from just kind of looking at the area, the weather, the sunshine, that we wanted to be down here. And so we started trying to find other opportunities just in case that didn't work out. The company that I'm with today, I think I saw the job posting on a Friday morning and applied, and the VP of HR called me Friday night and set up a conversation with her for that following Monday. Mm-hmm. Met with her on Monday, met with the CEO on Tuesday. On Wednesday, they called me back and wanted to fly me to Tampa to be able to meet the rest of the team. I flew out here that next week on Monday. They offered me a job on Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
So it was just there's no real reason. It's just kind of the way things worked out. When I decided to step away from my last position, prayed about it a lot, decided that, it was the right time to be able to do something like that. And throughout that whole process, really just left it in God's hands.
Right.
And ended up here.
So do you feel that, you say you prayed about it, do you feel like the reason why you felt sort of burned out in that moment where you're like, oh, I'm done with this, did you feel that God had his hand in that? Do you think that God wanted you to feel burned out? Does that make sense? I mean, I think sometimes what happens is God puts us in situations where he wants us to go into certain directions. So he'll put stuff on our heart, or he'll put certain, either obstacles in our way or whatever it may be, where it kind of forces our hand, occasionally to go in a certain direction. And I think a lot of it does have to do with God, to be honest with you, because ultimately he's in control, right? So
yeah, I'm sure. There are no coincidences. I would say that everything's planned out. During the time when I left the employer I was working for, it was I feel like I gave everything and gave so much of my life. Gave time away from my family. Gave time away from events with my kids and stuff like that because something at work was more important,
Right.
But when I left, it wasn't the thank you for your hard work kind of vibe that I was looking for, and that really struck me. And I think it really set out and helped me understand, or remember what's important. So yeah, I'm sure it did. Now, fast forward. And I've been here for, I guess, 2 years, almost 3 years. Mm-hmm. What has it been? 3 hurricanes? 5 foot of water in the house, lose the house.
Yeah, what's
one
funny,
thing after another.
It's funny bringing up hurricanes, and this is literally the first year in the last 15, for sure, that we haven't had a named hurricane here in Florida.
It's unbelievable.
So it's a breath of fresh air. I told my wife, I said, there's no way we can go through what we went through like last year. I mean, there's just no way. I mean, even if it's minor damage or even no damage, I mean, what ends up happening a lot of the times when these hurricanes come is you start jetting out of here, especially if it's a named storm. If for us, it's kind of like we realize that it's a named storm, or we're leaving. We're taking off instantly. We're like going to Virginia, or we're going to North Carolina, or at least to Georgia, right? So we're taking off quickly. So I think we all needed this. I think, just to kind of give the viewers a little bit of knowledge. Me and Kyle are neighbors. We live here in this city, specifically in Florida, for I've lived here for about 3 years. You've lived here for about how many years now?
It'll be 3 in February 26th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and he got smacked with the hurricane. We're pretty close to the water, but he got smacked with the hurricane, of course, and so did I. And so we ultimately, the way we got more closely acquainted is I kind of helped assist with some of the construction in his, on his home, and some of the other stuff that I do in my other life. My contracting business that I've, done for 20 plus years. That's some of my background here. So, and that's how we got more, personally acquainted, sort of went through this stuff together. You really go through the ringer when you're having to deal with these really stressful situations, insurances, and, your family is homeless, and let's figure out how do we put all of the pieces back together.
Sure.
And so, ultimately I think I hate to say this, but it's kind of like almost sinister internally, that I sort of enjoyed the obstacles that came along with with some of the things I had to accomplish and overcome. Because kind of in hindsight, don't get me wrong, who wants to get 4 feet of water in their house?
Sure.
But the obstacles that came along with it, and kind of looking back, I was just like, I feel like I needed it,
100%.
So
It's crazy how something like that happens, and you take, when the dust starts to settle, and it's where just over a year out, the dust is still settling, for everybody around here. But it's crazy when you start to reflect on things like that. And number one, looking back and asking yourself, how in the world did I get through that? And just realizing that day by day, one step at a time, and lean on God, that you're going to be able to do that. But two, for me, I think that when I moved down here, I had a lot of early success at a very young age, and took a liking to shiny things,
yeah.
And I think that being down here, going through this, one of the things that I've taken away from it is God really just hit me over the head and saying, stop worshiping these things, stop worshiping these possessions, and start putting your focus where it needs to be, And I think it was a couple weeks ago I was reading a devotional, and there was a quote in there, and it fits this situation perfectly, but it says, sometimes as you stray, God will take you through a storm to bring you back to reality. And in this case, it was a legitimate storm. But looking back, I have so much more value for the things that don't cost anything. Spending time with family, being in a home, watching my kids play on the beach, things that I definitely took for granted before that.
Gotcha. Yeah, so thanks for sharing, Kyle. No, I think that's, people want to know why we're here, and I like Florida, but it was never my plan to come to Florida. I came here under very interesting circumstances. So I'll tell a little bit of my testimony. So I too do sincerely believe that everything does happen for a reason. And kind of looking back during COVID, me and my wife really wanted to move to Hawaii. Like Maui was our go-to. And I really had my sights on a specific area. It was kind of near Lahaina. And of course, now that everybody knows what happened in Lahaina with the fires and the coincidental fires, right? That nobody could still to this day explain what had truly happened there. I don't even want to go down this rabbit hole, but the thousands of children that went missing, no explanation for that, and misplacement of homes, and all of a sudden celebrities coming in there buying out tons and tons of property for literally, we're talking less than pennies on the dollar. Yeah. Because most of these people don't have insurance. That specific area, Maui, was never prone to hurricanes. That nothing really goes through there. It's like this corridor where it's usually very untouched. It's very untouched, and so we had our sights on that place, and we loved it. We used to go there with my wife every year for our anniversary. We went there for our honeymoon. Fantastic area. I'm telling you, Lahaina was some of the nice resorts there, the hotels. It's just an experience. It's nothing like if somebody hasn't been there. It's really nothing like you've ever experienced. The water is different, the atmosphere you have, they're very tropic. But it's also you're not over hot, you're not
100%.
You know what I mean? Have you been there?
Yeah. Well, I've been to Oahu, never been to Maui, but from a climate standpoint.
So Oahu, I've been to the Big Island, I've been pretty much all of them. So Kauai, and the Big Island's different from Oahu, and it's also different from Maui, believe it or not. All the climates are different. The Big Island is very humid. Very humid. When you're there, I don't know what it is, but it could be some of the pressure, the atmospheric pressures. There's a big volcano there. I don't know what it is, but I just felt different there. Some people say that it could be spiritual, because there's a lot of worshiping that happened on that Big Island, and there's just a lot of sacrifices that were done. Maybe it could be a spiritual presence. When I was there on the Big Island, I just didn't feel very well. I just didn't feel the vibe. What's interesting is when we went to to Maui, it was a whole different experience. Every minute of me being there, I felt like this place is my home, right? Yeah. So I'll have to tell a story later. It's a really amazing testimony about how I had an encounter with God there on the island of Maui, and sort of what pushed us in the direction of sort of just me realizing, hey, this is kind of why I'm here, why God kind of has sort of called me to do some of this stuff. And I've always been sort of like you said earlier, I've always been drawn to shiny things too. Yeah. From a young age, from when I was a child. you guys can't see this, but there's a collection in front of us. You guys can see some of it in the background here. But I'm a big collector. I like to collect, collectibles, sports memorabilia, stuff like that. I've always been a collector of things since I was like even less than 10 years old. So I've been drawn to shiny things. So ultimately, kind of stemming to that, I've always kind of had an attraction towards, living a better life, trying to create this, dream family, ideal family kind of situation for myself. But I've never really understood where I could be a year, 5 or 10 years down the road. We never, none of us know. You know what I mean? When we're in a situation, we think, oh well, I'm gonna build a dream, pay off my house, pay off my cars, send my kids through college. Now I realize even college is useless, and that's coming from somebody that was in college for almost 8 years. I have several degrees from a university down from Western, and going through that, and it's not like I'm uneducated. And a lot of people say, "Well, college is for losers," and I'm like, "Well, are you educated?" No. Well, I don't know. I mean, and as you guys can see, I have a photo there of Charlie Kirk, and avid supporter of his, and had the pleasure of meeting him and getting really acquainted with him closely. And part of the reason, of course, why I'm doing this. But long story short, kind of the Hawaii thing didn't work out. What ended up actually happening, this is a big testimony, but we put in an offer on a house. This is crazy. So I put an offer on a house. We found a house, and I said, we're going to get this house, and if they take the offer of $800,000, the house is ours, because that's all I could qualify for. That was my max. Yeah. So the house, they wanted like almost 900 for it. So we sort of lowballed them at like 750. I know they were going to take it, and they came back to us and they said, well, we'll take 8.25. And I said 800 to my last offer. So they ended up taking the offer, and we closed the deal. And so my agent calls me and says, hey, the house is yours, and you just need to make it to the bank and put up your earnest money and kind of move forward. And I was like, oh, fantastic. So I'm like super excited about it. And little did I know my whole world was going to be rocked around me. And so what happened was I had come home and, went downstairs and sat down and did some work, laid down. I woke up the next day and I literally toppled over. I felt like I had vertigo. Like for quite literally no rhyme or reason, I couldn't walk.
Yeah.
And I called my wife in the room. She's like, are you okay? I said, no, I'm really not. I said, I'm literally, something's wrong with me. And she's like, are you sure you're not just anxious? Or, you've had some stomach problems in the past, and, maybe it's your acid or whatever. And I'm like, no, this is different. I said, I feel very ill. And she's like, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, you want to go to the hospital? And I'm like, nah, let's give it a day or two. Let me see what happens. So I sort of just sat back and let nature take its course and figure out, well, what's really going on? And so as I'm sitting there laying in bed, I'm like, but let me tell you, I've had COVID multiple times. Take this feeling and multiply it by about 10.
Sure.
And that's how I felt compared to COVID. I mean, it was worse, 10 times worse. I can't really even explain it. Like, I had this ringing in my ear and sort of like this pressure in my brain, a massive migraine, and just overall my whole, like sort of when you drink, the next day you wake up and that spinning feeling or that vertigo. Yeah. And so you feel that, and long story short, I wasn't feeling any better. And then like several days had gone by, and I wasn't getting any better. I told my wife, okay, you're going to take me to the doctor. I had a good doctor there. This was in Washington. And so we got in the car, we started driving there, and lo and behold, we got all the blood work done, everything, and everything comes back totally fine. They're like, there's nothing wrong with you. I'm like, are you guys kidding me? And at that point, it's like it's this bittersweet moment, right? Because you want them to find something so they can find a solution for it. Yeah. But they couldn't find anything. So I was like, so what do I do? And I asked my doctor. He's like, he started giving me all these natural, because he was a natural doctor, right? Naturopath. Because I went to a regular doctor to do the blood work. They checked me as well. They didn't find anything wrong with me either. But he looked over the blood work. He's like, well, we can do some stool tests, all this other additional testing. Quite literally, nothing was wrong with me. So I came home and I was fighting this urge internally, and I could hear the Holy Spirit saying, I'm trying to catch your attention. You're not listening. Basically, what this is about is you're not going to Hawaii. And I sort of brushed it off internally. I'm like, nah, that's just. I'm sort of like thinking, well, is that me making that up? Is that God telling me this? And a couple weeks goes by, and I don't remember what event was going on, but my parents came over. And I told my dad I wasn't feeling ill, and he just thought I was, making it up. But it was a chore, by the way, for me to get off the couch and physically go to the bathroom and come back.
Yeah.
It was literally like a life and death situation.
Yeah.
Because I resented the time I had to go to the restroom. It was that bad.
Yeah.
And for no reason. And so when you said God put you through a storm, he literally did. And what's crazy is my dad came over and I told him what was going on. He prayed with me. And I told him, I said, I think this is God stopping me from going to Hawaii. And I'm like, I really want to go. Like, I don't want to stay here. And I already made up my mind, right? And so when you make up your mind, you're sort of like, at that point, I'm wrestling with God. You know, I'm going head to head with him saying, hey, I want to be there. I need to be there. Why are you not letting me be there? Like sort of throwing an internal tantrum, for lack of a better word. So all of a sudden, you know, another day goes by too after that prayer, and I hear the Holy Spirit just, I mean, several times, I mean, a long time, I mean, my realtor's blowing up my phone. What's going on? Where's the earnest money? What are we doing? And I get on the phone with him the following day. I think it was either the following day or 2 days later. I don't remember exactly, but I said, I'm not going to Hawaii. I said, we got to close that chapter. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And I said, I'm not going to make it. He's like, what's going on? I was like, I'm sick. And they're like, what do you mean you're sick? I'm like, I'm sick. You got cancer? Are you dying? I was like, who knows? But I don't feel good. And they're like, do you got the flu? I'm like, it's not the flu. It's not a virus. I don't have any regular symptoms. So they just couldn't really understand what was going on internally. So long story short, as soon as those words came out of my mouth, I'm not going anywhere, I'm staying put, I started to feel better.
Yeah.
I started to feel better. Like, and I ignored it for the first day or two because I'm like, am I really getting better? And sort of, I came to terms. Let's just put it that way. I came to terms with the fact that I wasn't going anywhere and I'm not doing anything, and I had to come to terms with it. But once I did, I slowly but surely became better. Day by day, it got better.
So, how Florida then? How did Florida?
Well, when I realized real quickly, and let me tell you the time frame just so you understand, that's really relevant. So this was in February of 2020. And of course, in hindsight, now we see, like if I would have gone there in February to March when COVID became a thing, towards the end of March and April, COVID was already sort of a disaster.
Right.
And sort of we're dealing with all of these things kind of back and forth and going through all these motions and yada, yada, yada. So I'm just very grateful. God had obviously foreseen what was going to be happening. And Hawaii, they were horrible.
Right.
They were Nazis when it came towards all of their restrictions and their 6-foot distancing, and the quarantine thing was absurd.
Yeah.
They were quite literally making people go into a hotel and stay quarantined for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And you couldn't leave the hotel.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like a Nazi prison.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, those were crazy times.
So, long story short, I'm very glad that didn't happen. So when we got back sort of into town, I remember with my wife one day, and we got home, we were talking about it, and I had gotten significantly better. I could still feel a little bit of like that, you know what I mean? Like that sort of that hangover from that sickness, because it still lingered for a few months. I mean, I wasn't like 100%. I was like maybe 85%.
Right.
I could still feel a little bit of that lingering, and I think God did that on purpose. He just allowed it to linger just to sort of say, hey, you're not out of the woods here in case you change your mind. So, and then I started getting a call from a good friend here, Edward. He's an amazing dude. I met him in California many, many years ago, and he's just uncoincidentally just started to call me. And he was going through some stuff with work, and he was starting to work with some big builders and contractors and stuff like that. He's in the construction space. He was sort of like coming to me for advice and sort of consultations and stuff like that. And I was helping him, and we were sort of talking, and he kept telling me, hey, you should come to Florida. You should come to Florida. You should come to Florida. And he just wouldn't stop. And just to tell you a little bit about Edward, he's not that kind of guy. I mean, he's not the one that's going to call you and bug you.
Right.
So I felt something had been tugging at him. Something had been tugging at his heartstrings there. He did his part. And oftentimes we will do this where we do things, we don't know why we're doing them, and then they make sense later.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And so what happened was he just wouldn't take no for an answer. I said, fine. But here's the thing. I'll tell you another story, which is kind of crazy because this ties into this. We try to figure out, well, where are we going? We're not going to Hawaii. Are we going to go to Idaho? And so we had planned a trip to Idaho to go check out some land. This was before the Florida thing came up. So we went to Idaho, initially was the plan to move there, right? And so we planned this whole vacation around it. We're going to stay in an Airbnb. We're going to look at it. We're going to look at properties. We're going to talk to realtors. And as I made the plan, of course, I got insurance this time. And it was about 2 weeks before we were supposed to leave. And I was so excited about it, blah, blah, blah. And then only like a couple of days before we already started packing, because we're about ready to leave. My mom was actually in the Ukraine at the time, visiting some people and stuff. And my dad was actually sick. He was sick at home. And he had called me and said, I'm not feeling too good and so forth. So we're talking a little bit about everything. And he said, I don't feel very hot. And I said, don't tell me you got COVID, because this is like 2020, right? So we all still didn't really know what was going on with it, how serious it was or how dangerous it was. And so I told my wife, we're not going. I said, I can't leave my dad here by himself. It's horrible. So we rescheduled. We rescheduled for about a month out. And we decided, hey, we're just going to postpone this. And of course, we stayed back. I gave my dad some medicine, vitamin D, all the natural stuff that, we normally do. At that time, there was no ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. Nobody knew about that stuff yet. It was so early stages. So he basically recovered. He had a fever for 5 days and he recovered. He was fine. And we were scheduled for a month later. And of course, a month later, guess what? I get COVID. A month later. It wasn't a few days.
Yeah.
So it wasn't my dad that got me sick. It happened that way. And there was a day before we were supposed to leave. I get COVID. And I tell my wife, I don't feel good. And it's a different feeling. I said, it's not a normal flu. I said, I have this weird tension in my head, kind of a sinus. And I said, it feels very weird.
Yeah.
And you probably you've had COVID?
Yeah.
So your senses are off. The smells are all weird. It's just your mind is playing tricks on you. I said, it feels like you got poisoned.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's something I hadn't felt. So of course we canceled. And then at that point, I'm like, God, so you don't want me to go to Idaho? Is that what's going on? I mean, we had the Hawaii incident, we had the Idaho incident, and of course, and about a month goes by, and I actually, of course, being me, I actually try to plan a trip to go to Hawaii. And this is where they enforced the quarantines. And I called with the agent there. We were going to do a vacation, but who am I kidding? I was going to go look at properties. So I took a second jab at it. It's just such a humanistic thing to do, We tend to do that. We tend to teeter-totter a little bit and play with God when it comes to, even though he's pretty clear about some of his decisions in our life. And I entertained that for a little bit, and I thought it was funny because when it obviously didn't work out for the second time because of the quarantines, that's when the Florida thing, he started calling me. And of course I got insurance. I'm like, no, there's no way I'm going to lose this. And I told him, hey, don't count on it. We're probably not coming. Because in my mind's eye, I'm like, we haven't been able to leave the state for a whole year.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's just been no luck. And so lo and behold, as everything's sort of unfolding and we're making everything happen, I told my wife, I said, this trip may actually come through. And she's like, well, I guess we'll see. And then the following day we were going to fly out. Everything was kosher. Everything was going real smooth. And out of nowhere, we were in Florida. And we had only planned to be here for about 10 days. At the end of our trip, we actually ended up being here for almost a month. So we extended our stay significantly. And while we were here, I kept telling my wife, I said, I feel fantastic here. She's like, what do you mean? I said, I feel great. She's like, it's the sun. I'm like, I'm sure that's part of it. Don't get me wrong. But I said, I think it's being at sea level.
Yeah.
Because towards the end of the last few years when I was living in Washington, I started getting seasonal depression and sort of like a very, not a migraine per se, but I just would feel down, very down, especially when the sun would go away. And I just didn't feel good. I just felt icky. You know what I mean? It's not like I felt any true big symptoms, but it just got in the way of the quality of life,
right.
And I just was sick and tired of it. And that was a big factor for us. But when we were here, I felt absolutely amazing. We had actually come home after being here for almost a month. It was like 20 something days, just shy of a month. And so I told my wife, I think I want to move to Florida, and she's like, really, Florida? And she's like, I'm like, do you like it? The thing is I want you to be in agreement with this because I don't want you to feel like because we're leaving everything behind. Washington was there. It was everything for us. We had gone through so much there. 18 years. I had a business there. We moved from California initially, so I lived there for such a long period of time. Everything was familiar to me, but it was the trade-off here. I felt, well, we're in the middle of COVID. I mean, these COVID Nazis and these COVID monsters were at our throats trying to shut us down. I had gotten almost into 3 or 4 fistfights this span of like a year because of people just either trying to manhandle me or forcing me to put a mask on. And by the way, just for the record, I never wore a mask. In fact, the only mask I owned was those nylon ones that had like, they were like the mesh.
Yeah.
So, even we flew.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
We flew to Florida when I was wearing a mesh mask. They looked like they were like actual masks, but they were literally breathable.
Yeah.
They're like the net stocking.
Yeah.
Pretty much that's all it was.
Yeah.
And so I bought a handful of those, and they had them everywhere. Just if I had to be in a place like an airport or something, and they were forcing me. But that was the only time I put them on, is like in an airport on a plane. And otherwise, you're going to physically have to remove me from your building because I'm not putting them on. And there was an incident with the company. We walked into a store, this construction store, and this guy, he started basically physically manhandling me, and ended up grabbing me. I'm like, dude, get off me, or this is about to go down. Like, do not touch me. And so I was very frustrated, and he literally got aggressive with me, and very, very aggressive. Obviously, probably a liberal. And got very extremely aggressive with me. I'm like, look, don't touch me. And I ended up walking out. And he ended up calling the cops and told the cops I spit at him. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But he was so mad at me because I called him a liberal. And I basically just called him out on the spot. I said, you liberals in your mask. I said, you guys are completely out of your minds. Mm-hmm. And he just called the cops. And he said, oh, yeah, he got aggressive with me. He refused to put a mask on, and he spit at me. I said, and coincidentally, when he said he spit at me, I said, well, can we see the footage of camera? Oh, yeah, that hasn't been working for about a month. Of course it hasn't been working. I asked for that footage, and I said, let me see the footage. I mean, you claim to be that, that I'm being aggressive or I did this and that. Let me see the footage. I said, you won't find anything there. And, of course, all charges were dropped. I mean, he wasn't trying to do anything. I think he was just trying to make a point. But I had come home just so frustrated. You know what I mean? I'm just so frustrated because I can't believe we're having to go through this. We're already in a position where life is hard enough. We're raising a young family. I mean, at that time, I have 2 kids. I think my wife was pregnant with a third. And so we're going through this really difficult time in our life where it's hard enough to survive as it is, and we're being forced to, do all these insane kind of, crazy Nazi-related control system things where I was like, this is going to get out of control. And so that was actually when early stages, I'll tell you, kind of backtracking a little bit, but during March, kind of during the sickness that I had, my family came over and I told them, hey, all this COVID crap going on, because they actually thought I had COVID. They're like, maybe you have COVID. I'm like, no, I don't have any of the symptoms. I said, all this COVID stuff is about vaccines. And they said, what do you mean? What are vaccines? And keep in mind, vaccines weren't really a big thing in 2020. Nobody ever talked to them. I mean, if you have kids in school, that's really the only time they came up. And so I said, no, this is about vaccines. And I think God maybe gave me a little bit of insight. I actually ended up ordering a banner, I think like 5 or 6 of them, and it said, Jesus is my vaccine.
Yeah.
And I hung them on my balcony there overlooking this lake.
Yeah.
Where there was a lot of liberals that lived there, by the way, and I probably hated it, but I'll tell you, and sort of, we knew it was about the vaccines. But anyways, kind of going back to what I was saying, I told my wife, I said, we're gonna move there. I had that incident with that individual, and we had gone with my wife into this one store, it's called the Restore, and had this encounter where we had a guy quite literally following us around the store. He physically followed us around the store, like nonstop, just walked around, followed us. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, are you guys, why are you following me? Like, why are you harassing me? Why are you harassing my wife? And he started to give up, and he came, and what ended up eventually happening is, like, all the store associates, they surrounded us. And I felt like I was in some sort of like horror movie. And I said, you better get away from me, because that's about to go down. You get into my space, your 6-foot distance that you claim to have. Said, it's about to go down. I said, don't get near me. Just stay away from me. Like, we're not the type of people you could just approach like this. This is just inappropriate. And I said, my wife's pregnant. You guys are in our space. And of course, typical response, I'm going to call the cops. And what are you going to tell them? You're not wearing a mask.
Yeah.
We're going to kick you out of the store.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't have to wear a mask because we're outside. Well, you're still on our property. I said, so you're going to force me. And this kind of ties into what really pissed me off about that whole era in our very tainted, history, is the fact that you've given power to these nobodies, right? People that are low level, low IQ, and you give them this authority to have over people.
Right.
What do you think they're going to do with it?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Abuse it is what happens.
100%. They that's exactly what we got. We got a response of abuse, and they were abusing it to the point where it was very uncomfortable. Well, anyways, I ended up telling them to pretty much screw off. We ended up leaving. We didn't buy anything, but we had a police officer, of course, call me. And as we pulled up to the house, they probably took a picture of the plates, phone numbers, or whatever. And he said, "Oh yeah, you guys are not allowed to go there anymore." I said, "I have no intentions of going there anymore. That's not." But the point is what did we actually do? What law did I break? I confronted him, and he's like, "Look, we both know where we are right now in our society. We know that you didn't quote unquote break a law, but if a personal company or a store doesn't want you in their store, they can kick you out. That's their right."
Sure.
And I said, "Okay, well, but calling the cops, wasting resources, wasting, taxpayers' money." He's like, "Yeah, I get it. And he kept interrupting me, basically saying, "Look, you're preaching to the choir. Basically, he was in agreement. He's saying, "Look, I don't want to have to be calling you. This is probably just as absurd as things would ever get." So we had this kind of back and forth with him, and I got off the phone, and my vein in my head almost popped. And I walked up to my wife, and I said, "Look, we're actually packing right now." And she's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "We're moving." I said, "That is the last encounter I'll ever have with another psycho, a liberal in my entire life."
Yeah.
I said, "It's not about this." I said, "The quality of life is just gone." I said, "I feel like I'm living in some sort of Nazi Germany right now."
So you moved during COVID?
I literally moved during COVID, yeah. So towards end of 2020 was when we kind of made a decision, and we sort of early 2021 is when we pulled the trigger. So January of 2021, which I would still say it's very early stages, we decided to pull the trigger, and we drifted in this direction where we were like, okay, well, we're gonna go back to probably in this area, but we didn't know this area. So we ended up, just for the sake of time here, we ended up actually buying a house sight unseen. So, and the goal was, hey, sight unseen, we want to do some repairs before we even get there. And of course, to my luck, we ended up buying a house from a squatter. So he didn't want to move out. So I actually, funny enough, there was a guy here related to Edward. It's one of his family members. But I called him. He's a big dude. He's like probably 280, super yoked.
Yeah.
Big dude, very intimidating. Got his sleeve of tattoos. He just looks like one of those bikers.
Yeah.
And long hair, he just looks like a biker. Very intimidating looking dude. And long story short, I call him and I say, "Hey, can you do me a huge favor?" Knowing the fact that he's going to be fit for the job.
Right.
I said, "Can you go over there? Can you see if this guy's still there? And if he's not, tell him that we're going to be coming in here in the next couple of days, and you got to get out." And of course, he stops by and knocks on the door. He answers the door, and he got really scared. The other guy that lived there got scared, and he ended up texting my agent and said, "Hey, you can call off your dogs." He got so scared, he thought we were gonna beat him up. He thought we were gonna hurt him, and I was like, "Well, that was never really the goal, but we sort of wanted to say, hey, you need to leave."
Yeah.
You need to leave. You've overstayed your welcome. It's been 2 weeks since we purchased the property. Escrow's already deposited money to your account. Dude, you're literally trespassing.
Yeah.
The house doesn't belong to you anymore. So that's how we ended up there. And so that's why we moved specifically to that area in St. Pete. And we stayed there for a while. And of course, even before we moved here. But long story short, we eventually ended up moving to this area near the water. And we didn't want this house. It was pink. It was grotesque. I told my wife, I said, "Look," because we wanted to live somewhat near the water. We hadn't been truly exposed yet to what hurricanes were capable of doing yet.
Right.
So we underestimated, of course, and so we moved in this area, and we were sort of like, well, what are we up against? So they wanted a lot of money for this house, but we lowballed them. Mm-hmm. And I told my wife, "We're gonna get this house." She's like, "How do you know?" I was like, "Because I hate it." See, I'm like, anytime I'm in love with them. We had a house that we had found. It was far away from the water. It had this really those Tennessee kind of Georgia houses where it has those large columns in the front.
Yeah.
What do they call them? There's a name for it.
Oh, I don't know.
It's not Victorian. Is it colonial? I think it might be
Yeah,
colonial.
that sounds right.
I think the colonial look where they have these massive columns, kind of like a presidential kind of vibe when you walk up. I loved that look. It just made a lot of sense. because I'm very political. So I'm like, this would be fantastic. And there was like, actually, they created this little secret room. And there was a hidden passageway in the house where there was a secret room where there was a massive theater. And
That's cool.
And I thought I was in love with that. My kids loved it too. They were like, this is fantastic. This is cool, Dad. We should get this house. So I put in an offer. And long story short, we had to sell our house to get into that house. Mm-hmm. There was a contingency. And we put our house on the market. And what's crazy is the day after they had gotten another offer from somebody and they accepted, we got an offer on our house.
Really?
The day after.
Wow.
Like 2.5 weeks later.
Wow.
So we were pretty pissed off about that. So the way we ended up here was just a series of events. And keep in mind, we've been selling this house for 3 years.
Yeah.
As soon as I finished it, I wanted to sell it.
Yeah.
And I felt at God